Well, there are three things around this that are useful to keep in mind. First, the facts are still developing on this. We know that the feds, the FBI, has reportedly a month ago widened their investigation to include basically an investigation into a group called Armed Queers Salt Lake City, because of apparently, I believe, there were Discord messages and Steam group forums. These are like video game and online forum platforms that appeared to potentially show foreknowledge and kind of network connections between the Charlie Kirk shooter, potentially his boyfriend, as well as this network. And this Armed Queers SLC is also a militant LGBT gun group, which, once again, as we were talking about in the previous segment, is intensely connected to the international blob foreign policy establishment network. The head of Armed Queers Salt Lake City, this woman whose name is it's kind of hard to pronounce. So if you just give me a second, it's Armaya Fanayan, who was a male to female trans person running Armed Queers Salt Lake City, received a set of awards from Utah Global Diplomacy, which is funded. The majority of its funding comes directly from the U.S. State Department. So it's effectively the U.S. State Department granting awards and influence to the head of the Salt Lake City Armed Queers group, which had on its blazers to recruit people messages that effectively the revolution will not be voted in, with a picture of guns. I mean, this is the sort of Fed posting that if a Second Amendment right-wing group did,
insinuating use violence, not your vote.
Right. That we can't vote our way to power. We need to shoot our way to power.
Armed trans queer paramilitary group sounds very scary to me. It should sound very scary to any law-abiding citizen. Is there enough being done to investigate this? Like, is Cash Pam Patel, Pam Bondi, and Tulsi Gabbard, frankly, all hands on deck for this because we think they should be?
I think to understand this, you need to go into the USAID files and the State Department files and the CIA files and the U.S. Institute of Peace files to understand what's happening with the trans component of LGBT. This, to me, is not driven by woke ideology. It manifests as such, and at the margins, there are certainly the woke fanatics. But the trans wrecking ball is an instrument of statecraft. It is when we organize revolutions, and I give this example all the time, but it bears repeating. In 2024, when the Biden administration overthrew the democratically elected government of Bangladesh, the democratically elected prime minister was ousted from power and had to flee because of street mobs organized by the U.S. government under the Biden administration, by the U.S. State Department, USAID, and the National Endowment for Democracy. The IRI, the Republican wing of the National Endowment for Democracy, a CIA cutout, reported in leaked documents back to the State Department that they were organizing the trans community in Bangladesh to participate in street riots and street protests, and that they were specifically funding transgender dance festivals, transgender community organizing activities in order to accomplish that fact.
I've stopped you a couple times. You're so smart. I'm trying to figure out how in the hell it's very, very well believed and well researched that the trans population is about 1.5% of the national population. How do they have so much influence and so much power and so much, frankly, firepower?
Because what color revolution planners say is you only need 3.5% of any target population to take to the streets, and it can successfully overthrow any government. You need to get up to that 3.5% figure, which means you need to rally a coalition of fringes, the unemployed people, the youth groups, the students, the union members, the racial and religious and gendered fringes who have beef with a government that does not represent them. This is why you have this, kind of DEI framework that is exported for community organizing work in order to topple governments. And you will even see Republican support for it. In that Bangladesh example, that was the Republican wing of the National Endowment for Democracy organizing, funding transgender dance festivals because the transgender community was upset at Sheikh Hassan, the prime minister of Bangladesh. These are pawns. These are instruments of statecraft. And what you want are high-risk tolerance people with little to lose who are willing to throw their body in the form of mobs into the street against police. And when you have what you see with the transgender community is a very, very, very high rate of mental instability, uncontrollable, impulsive anger. You see a predilection to violence and murder. How many of the past murders, of high-profile murders or school shootings or church shootings just this year happened? I put a compilation video together of about a dozen of almost all of the major high-profile shootings this year had some trans adjacency to it. But this is useful. What you do when you are trying to influence the course of domestic politics in a foreign country and you can't control the top-down levers of the government, so you need to rely on civil society encirclement. You want radicals. You want crazies. You want criminals. You want mentally unstable people. Also people who a little bit of money goes a long way. They are dependent on your civil society services for their medical dilation and medical surgeries. People who are, tied to this State Department funded apparatus and will do favors for favors. People who have an intrinsic hate for a state that is heteronormative and does not represent them in their own eyes. Those people are easy to mobilize. They have a high risk tolerance. They're willing to do the confrontational, invasive, and often illegal activities that are necessary to break the camel's back when you are trying to topple the government in a street revolution. And so all of these programs need to be ripped up and torn up that are providing support to transgender clinics or art. A lot of this is laundered through the culture and arts space, the community organizing space, sometimes the union space. But you have to understand that this is not just coming from wokeness. This is coming from a State Department goal in a region, which usually is done for the service of a donor to a political apparatus. For example, George Soros is invested in Naftogaz in Ukraine and therefore depends on cutting Russia out of the market.
Right.
So when you see Antifa in Germany stopping a Russia to Germany pipeline that cuts Naftogaz profits out of it, then Antifa is serving as a paramilitary arm of the Soros Management Fund. When you see Antifa breaking up, fossil fuel and stop oil, and you see George Soros invested in ethanol fuel replacement technologies that rely on a government mandate to ban oil or fossil fuels.
Financial terrorism.
When they're doing that,
financial
you
terrorism.
see George Soros invested in AstraZeneca, and you see Antifa breaking up anti-vax meetings. They're serving as the paramilitary arm of Pfizer and AstraZeneca, and you see George Soros, them included in the portfolios of the Soros Management Fund.
It all fits together. Mike Benz puts it all together.